Hey everyone, this is Mike, and today we're going to be taking a look at the game Wizard of Legend. So I'm going to be talking about the two different aspects of the game, whereas the PvP aspect, well, co-op aspect I guess you could say, I'm not really going to talk about too much because it is only local co-op, although there is a workaround for PC players out there. But it's very limited, and the two players co-op mode is very similar to the single player anyways. So without further ado, let's jump into the single player. Now, I am going to be playing this on a controller, although playing it on a mouse and keyboard works perfectly fine. It's just getting a little bit of used to it. In my personal opinion, controller does feel a lot nicer in these kinds of games. So, Wizard of Legend, what is the kind of purpose of this game? So it's a roguelike dungeon crawler where you assume the role of a wizard and you're trying to become the Wizard of Legend by beating the Chaos Trials. We'll go a little bit more into detail of what those Chaos Trials are in just a bit. But first I'm going to show you what you can do in your little hub area. So when you first spawn in, you'll have like this room right here where you have three things that you can do. Over here we have our ward, which you can choose your outfit. Doesn't really change your gameplay that much, except just a few of them, like Pride for example. This one is literally just as a challenge. This one is minor challenging, and then other ones are just stat boosting things. So for example, this one is evade chance and crit. This is just pure defensively. But then for example, this one is pure offense. So you can choose whichever one you like. Maybe even just take one like a color that you like, for example, and then you can just run around with that. The stats really don't make or break your gameplay. Down here we have Mimi, our chest, where you can choose a starting relic. These relics are unlocked in the town that we're going to go to in just a bit. So you can choose offensive ones, defensive ones, and then special ones. So these like include Glove of Midas, which gives you more gold, but also stuff like combo gloves, which makes you combo more. Pathfinder's map, which is just a map to the dungeon so that you already see all of the special points on each floor, and other stuff like that. I usually run Glove of Midas because I just like to have the extra gold to spend in the dungeon's stores, which we'll go over in just a bit as well. And then over here we have Tomi the Grimoire, where you can basically equip your starting set of spells. So there are 4 different kinds of spells: your basic, dash, standard, and signature. These 3 can be swapped out inside of the dungeon when you find an Arcana vendor. The signature, however, will stay throughout the entire run, because the special thing about the signature spell, is that they actually come in 2 forms, whereas all of the other Arcana are only 1 form. So I'm gonna equip a different one to show you an example. This one will be very clear. So if the spell is just on its normal form, it will look like this. But if you can see the cursor on my screen, like in the top left, there is a small bar underneath my HP pool. And if I hit enemies with spells or basic abilities, that bar will grow. Now, if you're in your room, you can just pick up this thing to charge it up. Once you're charged up, you'll see that there's like a mirage following you, as well as like a little power-up sound when you pick it up. And this basically will charge your signature, and when you use it, it will be a lot more powerful. So just note that the signature ability cannot be changed whilst you're inside of your run, whereas the other 3 you can just swap out on the fly. I'm just going to switch this back to this one, because that's what I like to play with. There's a Flame Breath, and then if it's charged up, you're like a lot more flamey. So yeah, those are your 4 basic abilities. You have a normal spell, which your signature is also normal until it's charged up. You have your dashing ability, which you can use to dash around. Does not give you invulnerability frames though. This one does, because it's a special one, but you usually need to get a relic. I think it's called Teimo's Leaf, but it makes you invulnerable while you're dashing. And then you have your basic attack, which you can just spam. So you pretty much use your abilities and then you spam your melee attack until your cooldowns are back for your normal spells. That's what you can do in here. You can change your code, you can choose a starting relic, and set up your basic set of spells. And then if we head over here, we can go and head into the town. Now, I've already completed the entire game, pretty much, or at least what you can unlock in the preview version. Like if you look over here, you see I have all of the Arcana unlocked. All of these you can find inside of the dungeon, and you can also unlock them in the town permanently. The Chaos Arcana, though, are unlocked by completing an entire run. So you have to do 8 runs in total to get all of the 8 Chaos Arcana. Maybe they'll add more later in the future, but we're not entirely sure of that yet. So we'll have to wait for news on that one. So that's why the town is going to be kind of empty for me, because I've already bought all the stuff. But over here you have your Magic Vendor. He'll have 2 normal Arcanas on display here. These can be basic attacks, these can be dashes, they can be just your normal standard Arcanas. And then over here you will have your signature. Now, I highly recommend that you don't buy the signature for 2 reasons. One, it is 3 times as expensive as a normal Arcana. So I think that the gold is better spent buying as much of the normal Arcana first, so that you can play around with which one that you like the most, so that you get like a good feeling for a build that you want to run with, that you have success with. That you can eventually complete the game and get those shiny Chaos Arcanas. The second reason why is because the actual council members drop the signature Arcanas every time you defeat them until you've unlocked all of the signature Arcanas, and then they'll just drop random spells. So that's why I recommend you buy the normal ones first. Over here you have the Relic Vendor. This one will sell random relics. But yeah, as you can see, I was about all of those. And here we have 2 NPCs. This one I don't use as much. If you talk to him, you can basically start in a region of choice. So say you have trouble beating the fire region, you can choose to have it as your first region, because as you go up in levels, the difficulty becomes harder and harder as well. So if you have trouble with a certain region, you can just talk to this guy, offer him some gems, and you'll start in the region of your choosing. This NPC right here will trade some gems for gold. Gems is the currency that you use in the town, which is this currency right here. You'll see it, I have 999, which is the cap. Gold is what is the currency that you'll be spending inside of the dungeon. So that once you've unlocked all of the stuff here, you can just trade in your gems for some gold so that your run will go a bit smoother. And then over here you can talk to this person to like alter your robe that you're wearing and give it some more stats. I actually don't know what this does. If I'm wearing a different robe than this one right now, it would give me more HP, because the base HP pool is 500, but this robe gives me 25 extra HP. If I were to be wearing a robe that does not have the HP increase, then this person would actually give me those 25 extra HP. So I'm not entirely sure what they just specifically do. So just to put that out there. And then over here we have, of course, our portal to enter the Chaos Trials. Now, before I enter this, I am going to switch out to some pre-recorded gameplay, because I want to be able to focus on telling you about the game itself, rather than me focusing on trying to stay alive and beat the dungeon. Alright, so I've switched over to some pre-recorded gameplay of a couple different runs that I did, so you can see a couple of the different spell combos in action. And also so it's easier for me to like actually talk without having to concentrate on the game. Now, the first thing that you'll see when you enter the Chaos Trials is that you'll get a layout of the dungeon. You'll see the 3 different regions, and then you have your last final boss. Now, the way each level works is you will have 2 floors of basically just trash mobs and then a mini boss that you have to fight off before you can go on to the next one. And then after you beat those 2 floors, you fight your first council member. After beating them, you move on to level 2, which the enemies will be a bit more difficult, the mini-bosses will be more difficult as well as the council member that you will face at the end of the level. And then you'll go on to level 3. Once you've beaten that one, then you go on to the final boss. And if you beat the final boss, you're able to get your first Chaos Arcana, beat him 8 times, and you unlock all 8 of them. Now, every floor has 4 points of interest, one being the mini-boss, which is very obvious, of course. And then you always have a Arcana vendor and a Relic vendor. Now, the Arcana vendor will always have 3 basic Arcanas, as well as an upgraded Arcana. This upgraded Arcana can be some Arcana that you already have equipped in your loadout, but it can also be some other random one that you do not have equipped in your kit right now. Now, what I would recommend is that you try to get at least a couple of upgraded Arcanas before fighting the final boss, because the increases that they give, although they might not be too big of a change to the spell, are quite nice to have regardless. I'd also suggest that you spend your first couple of 100 of gold on getting 2 extra Arcana so that you have your full loadout of 6 Arcanas. because it will help your DPS quite a bit as well as your AoEing. If we go over to the Relic Vendor will always have a couple of different relics as well as HP potions. There are relics that allow the Spell Vendor and the Relic Vendor to have unlimited stock, so you can basically keep buying stuff from them. But it does come with the effect that HP potions do not get restocked. So you can basically buy as many relics or arcanas as you want, but the potions and the upgraded arcanas, I might add as well, they do not get restocked. So you only get one of those per floor. Then the fourth thing is a special NPC, and this NPC can be a couple of different things. It can be Taffy, which is the Pinata, and if you beat the Pinata under the time before it regains all of its HP, you'll get a little gift. I'm not going to tell you what it is, just try to find that out by yourself when you come across him. But there's also the Cursed Relic Vendor. If you've been a beta player, then you'll also see some of your normal relics that you had in the beta come back as a Cursed Relic, and that is because the Cursed Relics usually have quite strong effects, but they also have a big negative, like for example deal double damage but take double damage, lose half of your HP but gain lifesteal, stuff like that. There are some Cursed Relics that I really like picking up, like the Alchemy Stone, because as an endgame player the Alchemy Stone is incredible value because it stops you from getting gems, and it basically transforms the gems into gold, basically making your dungeon run a whole lot better. And then there's a couple of other random NPCs that you'll come across, which I'm just going to leave to you to find out what their effects are, because some of them are quite annoying and some of them can be quite useful. Now, how do you kind of go about beating this floor? So, as you're exploring the floor, you will see on your minimap to the left that there is an enemy counter with 3 skulls next to it. And depending on how many skulls you have, there will be enemies on the map. So as you're beating the normal enemies on the map, the amount of skulls will slowly decrease until there's none left. And when you've challenged the boss, you'll see that on the boss's stone, I guess I'll call it for now, you'll have 4 skulls. You'll have the skull of the boss, and then there is 3 more. Those 3 more are the amount of enemies left on the map. So you can technically boss rush in this game if you want to, but doing so will make the boss fight harder for you. If you decide to clear all of the enemies on the map, the boss will almost spawn no adds, but if you boss rush and you kill, let's say, no of the normal enemies on the map, and you initiate the boss fight, then the boss will spawn a bunch of adds. So it's kind of like whatever you want to decide for yourself. Do you want to go fast but have a more challenging boss fight? Or do you want to take it a bit slower, explore the map a bit, and then try to fight a boss that is a little bit easier? After you've beaten the boss, you also get access to your 3 portals again, which lead to the Arcana Vendor, the Relic Vendor, and then the random NPC on the map. Do note that you'll have to find them first, and even if you have the Pathfinder's map, which shows their location on the map, you'll still actually need to visit the shop, actually physically be there, before you can use the portal from the boss room to go in there. Vice versa, it also works the same. So you can find the boss room first, but then decide not to fight him yet, to go find another shop or the random NPC or something, and when you find them, you can immediately use the teleporter to go to the boss room to fight the boss. You basically do this twice because there's 2 floors, and then you have your council member fight, which the council member is one of the 3 council members, obviously, which is just going to be a one-on-one boss fight, no adds whatsoever. After you beat the council member, they will always drop a random arcana that is upgraded, so there is basically, well, there's more than 2 ways of getting them, because there's also random drops and chests that you can find. But the 2 big ways of actually acquiring new arcana, or relics for that matter, in the dungeon is by buying them from either from the vendors or by having them drop from the mini-bosses. But the council member boss fights will always drop an upgraded arcana. So even if you have a set of arcanas that you might not like as much, there is always a chance that the council member will drop something that you will like, and it will always be upgraded as well. Now, each time you beat one of the council members, the difficulty of the dungeon will increase. So that's why the NPC that I referred to earlier, where you can choose your starting region, can be quite useful, because it allows you to get practice on the boss fights that you want to get practice on. For example, say you're bad against Zeal, the Fire Empress, Then you can choose to start in the fire region, and then you'll always be able to fight against her until you finally like know her moveset and are able to move around it a bit better. So it's useful for those kind of things. If you have trouble beating a boss fight, it's better to beat it as your first boss than leave her to potentially be the last one. You can only choose your first starting region, by the way, because the other two regions are always going to be random then. If you just enter the dungeon without talking to the NPC, then one of the three regions will be your starting region, and it will just all be random from there on out. Now, the only thing that is always going to be a permanent is that the final boss is always going to be the Chaos Wizard, which I'll show a little bit of gameplay of. I'm going to try not to show too much gameplay of him, because I still want you guys to figure some things out on your own, but I'm going to show some small snippets here and there. But that basically covers all of it, I think. You go into the dungeon, start out with your 4 basic arcanas that you set up yourself, and then you basically acquire new arcanas and relics by beating mobs, monsters, getting them from drops in chests or buying them from the vendors. Every time you beat a council member, the difficulty of the dungeon will go up by 1 level, and once you've beaten the 3rd council member, you get to fight against the Chaos Wizard, which once you've beat him, you will also get your first Chaos spell, and then more and more as you beat him more times. That kind of covers the single player aspect of the game, so I'm briefly gonna go over the multiplayer, which is not that much at all. We currently have 2 modes, which is the PvP, which is just one-on-one fighting. But the big problem, well, I'll actually cover something else first. The big problem with PvP, or with just like multiplayer in general, is that it's all local co-op. Now, for the PC players out there, there is a way to actually play online with your friends, but you'll actually have to connect to your friend's PC, or vice versa. He'll have to connect to your PC. That's the only way that you can play multiplayer right now online. For the other devices like the PlayStation, the Xbox or the Switch, there is no actual online multiplayer option out there right now. So just putting that out of the way there. So I'll first cover PvP, and then we'll go over co-op, because co-op is almost exactly the same as single player, but just played with 2 players. So as for PvP, you get to choose your your 4 starting arcanas as you do in the single player, and then you get to choose a map that you want to fight on. Now, as you are fighting against your friends, random spells will start dropping from the sky on the map, and you basically pick them up, and then you try to use them and win against your friend. It's literally that simple. The rounds always seem to be a best of 3, so win twice and you win the round or the match, and then you can go out again, choose new spells, and enter again, and go from there. So that's pretty much the PvP. Start with 4 basic arcanas, and then random arcanas will drop as the match progresses. And then as for the co-op, it's pretty much the same as single player. It's just that you'll share everything. So gems are shared, gold is shared. The only thing that you have to do if you both want to get the upgrade on your robe, you'll both have to talk to the NPC and spend the gold twice there. But for trading the gems for gold, you can only do that once. And then once you're inside of the dungeon, only one person will be able to buy 1 spell. So say I buy a fire spell from the Arcana vendor, then that spell will be gone from his inventory and my friend can't pick it up. Same with health potions and stuff like that, so everything is shared. Now, one good thing is though that, of course, since you're playing with 2 people, your DPS is going to be a whole lot higher, because there's actually 2 people throwing out all of their spells. So that is kind of what balances it out, that you're also sharing all of your relics and other arcana that drop. Now, if one of your teammates dies, so either you die or your friend dies, you'll turn into a ghost, and as your friend is killing enemies, they will drop green orbs that the ghost has to pick up, and once the ghost picks up enough orbs, he will regain all of his some of his HP and respawn. We also found out that if you buy a health potion as the person that's still alive, your dead ghost will also respawn. And I think that pretty much covers that. I do have to say that the co-op is just mayhem if you play it, because there's going to be 2 people slingering around against a lot of enemies, so it can get a bit hectic. But I think that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to talk about today. So you have your single player, which I think is really good, really fleshed out. Beat the game a couple times to unlock all of your Chaos Arcana, you can buy stuff with gems in the little town, and then gold is a currency that you use to buy stuff inside of the dungeons. And then you have co-op and PvP, which are maybe not as fleshed out as the single player is, but are still fun to play nevertheless. So with that all out of the way, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I'll leave links to where you can buy the game in the description below, because it will be available for purchase. On some platforms you can pre-order it, but on Steam you can only put it on your wishlist, I think. But I'll just leave all the links down in the description below, and you can go check it out if you want to do so. So with that, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.